Hey everyone, I wanted to give you a quick tour of this tool that we put together a few years ago. And the purpose of the tool is to calculate the total cost of procurement, or the cost of moving procurement offshore, say to an overseas supplier, those kind of analyses, because oftentimes we leave out a lot of the costs when we do this kind of analysis. So put together a simple spreadsheet. This was inspired by an article written by Jim Womack from the Lean Enterprise Institute, LEI. So pretty simple calculations, but I think it will be illuminating to see the kinds of things, to assess the kinds of things that we normally leave out. So I'm going to fill this out as we go. You'll notice that each one of the rows here has a little comment section or instructions where you can really understand what's required for each of these data elements. So let's start. We have a current cost per piece for an item of $12, and we have a part number for it. And so let's go through and just start filling this out. We'll just make up numbers. Let's say that we have 100,000 of these that we expect to either buy or procure. So 100,000. And how many years do we expect this to be active? So let's just say 3. And cost to carry percentage. So cost to carry percentage means what value are we assessing to the cost of having that inventory? Because you have to buy it, so you have to pay for it, you have to store it, you have to move it, you have to count it, cycle count it, etc. There are a whole bunch and you have to throw it away at some point if you no longer need it, scrap it, etc. So what value do we assign to that? Obviously, a higher percentage means we assign more risk to holding inventory. And if it's a lower percentage, we assign a smaller risk. So let's put in a percentage like 5%, which is pretty conservative. Okay, so cost to carry inventory. Now, cost per piece offshore. So let's say that we go out to an outside supplier and they come back to us with a quote. Remember, this is our $12 part, and they quote, say, $8. So normally that would sound pretty darn good, right? Currently costs us 12 and we can buy it for 8. But logic says it's not free to get it to us, so we have to include some shipping costs. So shipping quantity, so we'll get this, say, in lots of 2,000. And the cost per each of those shipments of 2,000, let's say, is, we'll just make up a number again. We'll say it's $1,000. Okay, so that adds some cost to our $8. That adds another 50 cents, right, to the cost of each part. So it's still a pretty good deal. And that shows, that's a running total up here, shows an offshore cost of $8.50 or a savings of $3.50. So far, so good. But now let's look at the things that we normally leave out of the consideration. So lean math adjustments, we're calling it. So overhead cost per piece. So we have costs other than just the direct costs. We have overhead costs associated with the part. And let's say we'll put in a number like $2 per piece. Maybe that's a little high. Let's put in $1 per piece. Overhead cost. And number of pieces in transit. So we have some inventory that we expect to have coming to us. So let's say we have a couple shipments in transit. So that's inventory that we don't have yet, but it's on its way to us. And then number of pieces for safety stock. So the definition of that one is estimate the additional inventory that may be required to hold to ensure uninterrupted supply. So if this is coming from overseas, we don't want to just be hand to mouth. So we may have to hold some additional inventory in case something goes wrong, right? So now our cost is going up. So we've added 7 cents per piece for transit cost and safety stock. Now, cost per expedited shipment. Estimate the incremental cost related to an expedited shipment from the offshore location. What this means is what happens if we're running short or we have variability of demand. What are the costs of having to air freight, for example, some of these parts? We need to have some factor for that. So if we have to air freight it, let's say that's a $2,000 cost there. And how many of these expedited shipments might we have over that life of the product? Well, who knows, but we'll put in an estimate. Let's say 6 of those. So that's adding another 12 cents, right, per piece to the cost of this. Now, cost per engineering trip. Enter the travel and engineering time expense for a trip to the offshore facility. So if we have to physically go and check it out and do a quality inspection, for example, what would be the cost per engineering trip to send engineers over there? Not cheap to fly over there, so we'll put in, say, $10,000. And senior management, even more, because they're staying in the fancy hotels. So let's say $15 per trip. So how many engineering trips to get all this set up? Well, let's say 4. And estimated senior management trips, let's say 2 of those to get this set up. Okay, so now we've added 40 cents and 30 cents to the cost of this. Next one, factor for warranty claims cost. Enter an estimate for incremental warranty claims driven by long learning curves at the offshore supplier in dollars. That means we don't expect them, since they're new at this, to get it perfect. Might we have some additional warranty claims? Maybe, right? So let's add in a factor for warranty claims of something like $10,000. So that adds 10 cents over the per piece. Factor for out of stock and lost sales. So enter an estimate of out of stock and lost sales costs. Again, 12,000. Again, these are just estimates, hopefully conservative estimates, to help us get through this. And then scrap and obsolescence. If we end up with excess material or stuff we don't need, because we've had to send that supplier a forecast that could be wrong. So I'm going to enter, it's a percent. So scrap and obsolescence percent, let's say a 5% scrap and obsolescence. Now, here's some other ones that are very interesting. Competition and risk factor. So percentage to reflect the risk that offshore supplier could become a potential competitor. Well, it depends on how well you know them and trust them. Let's put in a small factor there, though. And then currency risk, that could be more risky, because if there's a change in the exchange rate to this with this foreign country, that could actually drive things up significantly. But let's put in a factor of, say, 6%. And then country risk, adjust for political uncertainties, like pandemic, for example. Case in point, impact of SARS, it says, could be reflected here. That could be significant. So we'll put in a 4% estimate there. Okay. And then cost of moving. Enter the incremental cost of moving manufacturing equipment, materials, and facilities to the offshore location. So if we're actually moving production over there, that could be huge. So we'll put in, let's just say $50,000. And additional connectivity expense, that means the cost of connecting with them. If they're in a different time zone, we need to factor that into our thinking too. Not convenient if they're in a different part of the world. Okay, so when we go through this analysis, what we find, and we could have been more aggressive with our numbers, we find that our original cost per piece, $12, and our adjusted cost per piece, including all these factors, is $11.54. So is this procurement actually worth it? Well, probably not. We're only saving 46 cents, plus we're incurring a whole bunch of work and risk in doing that. So what seemed, in other words, originally to be an attractive option now seems like a wash. And if I'd been more aggressive on some of these estimates, it would have been even worse. It could have been a loss. So that's the purpose of this tool. is to go through and at least do some thinking about these different risk factors. They may be zero, these additional risk factors may be zero, but at least they need to be thought about when we're talking about moving production somewhere else or evaluating the cost of outsourcing work that we currently do internally to an outside supplier. Okay, with that, enjoy. You'll be able to download this Excel worksheet on this page. See you later.